Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm here with special guest author Dr. Karen Swallow Pryor. If you didn't know that already, I've been advertising this, so I think many of you are here from that. Hi, Dr. Pryor.
Hello. Oh,
So,
technology. I'm glad we got rid of the bug, whatever it was.
yeah. Sorry for the late start, the slight delay. We had some technical issues. I'm still a little new to this Facebook Live thing myself. I've done it a few times and it's worked fine, but it's always something with technology. But yeah, as some of you know, I've been trying to connect with other authors, produce content for authors, and I mean, work on my own writing journey as well, but also engage with some of you. So Dr. Pryor has graciously agreed to be with us here today to answer some questions. If you're not yet familiar with Dr. Pryor and her work, and you really should be, she's written, I believe, 3 books now, 3 of your own, as well as articles for a number of publications. She's also speaking at a number of conferences and becoming a very big name, or has become one already, in the literary academic world. I had the privilege of studying under her as a literature student some years ago, and I recently reconnected with her when she was speaking at the Hope Words Writers Conference. So I'm very grateful that she's graciously agreed to be here and answer some of our questions today. Now I will say one more thing. I know many of you writers out there on my page are primarily interested in writing fiction, and Dr. Pryor is a nonfiction writer, but I believe 2 of your books have been about fiction so far, about the great stories that capture our imaginations, and you have been teaching at the college level, teaching fiction for many years. So I mean, it's not that you're not knowledgeable of fiction. And when I heard you speak recently, you were also speaking about memoir, which is in many ways just applying good narrative and storytelling principles to real life events. So it has some things in common with other forms of storytelling that way. So my point is, I dare say you've still gotten some insights into writing, whether fiction or nonfiction, that we can all learn from today. So that's the hope. So I have some
That is
questions.
the hope.
Yeah, so I'm hopeful. So I have some questions prepared for you, but I also want to make this an interactive discussion. So for those of you who are watching, following along, thank you for being here as well. Post your questions or comments in the chat about reading, writing, publishing, or any of those topics. She is familiar with all of those. We want to hear from some of you too today. Okay, so I know I gave you kind of an intro, but for those who aren't familiar, Dr. Pryor, could you just briefly explain, or I guess tell us about some of your major work, your recent work, or just the kinds of things you've been doing to get us caught up to speed?
Yeah, so I have been a college English professor for over 2 decades. I was 21 years at Liberty University, primarily teaching literature courses, a writing course, writing for cultural engagement, and of course teaching. When you teach freshman composition, you're teaching writing. So I've taught writing as well as literature. I'm now a research professor of English and Christianity and Culture at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. And I also, as you've already mentioned, I do write a lot of articles and a number of books. So I've been developing my craft and my career as a writer for over 10 years now. And I know we're going to get into some of those details, but I'm a professor and writer.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. So I want to ask you, I'm going to make my list here. Of the books you published recently, well, I know you've written, let's see, I have a couple of them here. You have Booked, which is kind of your own story, and you have On Reading Well, which is more about just, I guess, recommendations of literature in general. So with all your writing, but I guess particularly these books, who are the biggest influences? I mean, I know you've written on your own life experience and things like that, but as far as authors go, or anyone else you've kind of studied or I guess appreciated their work, who are some of the biggest influences on your writing, would you say? Who or what?
Yeah, well, I mean, my area of specialty is 18th and 19th century British literature. So obviously I've read a lot of that, both fiction and poetry and essays. And so I would say that some of the influence that I have from those writers that I love and that I've studied so much is kind of a satirical or comic bent, because the 18th century writers were very satirical. I also, this seems really trivial, but I love long sentences with dashes. You see a lot of that in 18th century and 19th century writing. A lot of punctuation. As we grow, more and more into the late modern age, we see punctuation kind of being minimized because of, digital space and so forth, and streamlined. So even just some things about writing style and punctuation preferences and long sentences, those come with the kinds of writing that you spend a lot of time in. I've tried to correct for that and streamline, and or at least balance it out a little bit. And then in terms of the creative writing, I mean, again, I love 18th and 19th century novels, which are thick and long, and I love those stories. But I also, there's a lot of contemporary fiction that I like to read. I try to stay up on a little bit. And I would say one of the greatest influences on my thinking, my writing, and my judgment of writing is Flannery O'Connor. And
Somehow I knew you were going to say that, but
you
good
knew
choice.
it.
Good choice.
She's a short story writer and a novelist, but also she herself was a critic, and her collection Mystery and Manners, I think, says so much about what good writing is and isn't. Really, to kind of sum it up, it really does have to do with showing rather than telling, through the manners that you describe in your fiction, which reveals the mystery of their essence and of the universe.
That's a skill that all writers have to learn and probably won't master completely in their career. But so, do you use a lot of the long sentences with dashes?
I do, and when I wrote on Reading Well, that second book that you held up, I mean, it's a it's a book about literature, and it's also a book about moral philosophy and theology, which are obviously very deep subjects. And so there's a lot of technical language and terms there. And so I worked very, very hard on my sentences in that book, so that if I had a long sentence, that I knew I had a lot of long sentences explaining virtues and philosophy. And so it's very intentional about punctuating those long sentences with short ones throughout, that just kind of were punchier and easier, just kind of packed a lot. So I worked very hard at that, and probably one of the best, I mean, of all of the reviews and accolades and praise I've gotten for that book, the one that meant the most to me was just some random guy on Twitter. I think he wrote a little review and tweeted it, but he said that there wasn't, what did he say? He said there wasn't a single, there wasn't a lazy sentence in the book.
That's good.
And that just meant a lot to me, because I did work really hard on every sentence. So
No, I know that's a struggle. We all have. I mean, those of us who are experienced writers, some of us are overwriters. I know I am too. And I mean, we want to use a lot of words. I mean, even as I speak, I'm rambling a little bit. But when your sentences are all there for a purpose, and you go over I guess not just the big picture, but the craft of each sentence, that's a skill to hone. Yeah, very good. That kind of goes into my next question. I mean, most of us know, or should know at least, writing isn't easy. It doesn't come naturally to everyone, and even if it does, you still have to work at it. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would ask you, what are your biggest struggles with the craft of writing or editing? And or similar question, what was the hardest part of the process for these books, or for any of these of your books?
So I hate about 90% of the writing process.
Honestly, there.
When I'm in the very earliest stages, which is research and thinking and figuring out what I want to write, I feel very, I feel at a loss, I feel despair, I feel helpless, I feel like I'm not going to find my way there. Then as far as like researching and taking notes, because my writing is, it is often very well, it depends on research. I could take research and take notes all day long. Like, that's just very easy, obviously. I mean, I enjoy it, and it's easy. Yeah. And then when I have this big mass of pages with notes and chunks, That part feels also very hard and helpless. Like, how can I make any sense out of this? And so, and that's really the majority of the time this writing is making, kind of, for me, again, the kind of writing that I do, I'm accumulating mounds of things, mounds of words, and then I feel like I'm a sculptor, kind of whittling away and organizing, and that's just very hard, and trying to make a connection and put things in order. All of that is hard and overwhelming. And the part I love the most, well, if we compare writing to building a house, not that I know how to build a house, but I've watched my husband do it. The part I like is the interior decorating.
Okay.
Like the heavy work of digging the foundation and putting up the walls. It's just very hard. And then I love, as I've already mentioned, I love making my sentences really tight and good. I love going back over and picking a better word and replacing 3 words with 1 good word. I love that. I enjoy that, and I could do that forever, but usually there's a deadline, so I have to stop at some point.
Yeah. It's good. I think I'm almost the opposite in some ways. I guess we each have different focuses, but yeah, it's so you said I'm trying to remember what you said. You had you compile mounds and mounds, and then, like, I guess tweak it or whittle it down from there. Did you mean mounds and mounds of research, or by that point you're speaking of words, like of like a first draft of writing?
Yeah, the first, again, because of the things that I'm writing are special. Well, the last 2 books have been a lot of, I'm drawing on others' research. It's kind of like, the mounds are the research and the notes I've taken, and then I have to add. It's almost like knitting or sewing, my own words, and kind of putting things in order and making those connections with all the chunks of information that I have. So that part is, once it's just we all know there's like this, you get into this groove, and it takes a long time for me to get into it. And then once you do, it's like magic. But until you hit that, it just feels like I'll never be able to do it.
Yeah. So your notes are almost like a very rough first draft, maybe like you go from there, kind of.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'll often work it on a chapter at a time, and so usually the notes are kind of just a pile of things, and then the first draft is when I start organizing them and making the connections for myself and fleshing out the ideas.
Okay, very good. We have a few questions in the audience. Remember, post your questions in the chat. One very lovely audience member, that's my wife, asks, what does the outlining process look like for you, or do you have much of an outlining process?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, if I'm writing a book, by the time I'm writing a book, I've already written a book proposal. So the book proposal will have a list of the chapters. And so in that sense, the chapters are an outline of the whole book. And in terms of, say, a chapter, no, I don't have an outline. I'm not an outliner. I'll have like, I need like the major, like I need the major points or chapters, and then within a chapter, I will have like 3 major, in my mind, it'll be 3 points or something that I want to connect, but very basic.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen very different camps of writers. We call them plotters and pantsers sometimes.
Plotters and what?
And I've heard them called pantsers.
Oh, pantsers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm somewhere in between.
By the seat of your pants. Yeah. I mean, I guess we're all somewhere in between. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Not everyone is an outliner. Okay. So I mean, I've heard it said by creative writing teachers, do what process works for you. But if you found your process in your groove, that's good. Right. There's a question about advice to writers. I'll get there in a minute, because that was kind of one of my questions too. But first, I wanted to ask you, I guess in contrast to your struggles, what's your biggest strength in writing, or what's the one thing that your books do really well? Maybe you touched on it already with the part you enjoy, but what do you think is the one or 2 things that you do really, really well?
Well, I do think the editing part, if we, when I'm teaching writing, I teach kind of like 6 six steps, is kind of the thinking and planning stage, then the drafting, then revising, then editing, and then proofing. I think that's five or six. So my greatest strength is the editing. Well, I mean, I do it all, but what I enjoy the most is the editing, that kind of polishing stage. I love to polish. I'm not so good at the proofing. Like, I'm queen of the typos. Every time I get a book, that's why my publishers it goes through several edits, but they'll always find a typo later, and it's like, oh, you just have to live with that. So the editing is the strongest. I love that. And again, I do think that's I'm not there are so many writers that are far better than I am, who are more artful and more I don't know. I can read a lot of writers and say, wow, I wish I wrote like that. But I do think that I can get my point across. My writing is very idea intense, but I think that I do write, for writing nonfiction, I write in a fairly beautiful way. I try to be beautiful, and some people, once in a while I might reach a point of elegance, and I guess that's what I strive for, but it doesn't come naturally to me, really. I have to work at it.
Sure. You'll do. Okay. Thank you. Good. SL asks, what advice do you give writers who struggle to get started? I've always wanted to write memoir and have tons of thoughts, but what are some practical tips to get the ideas organized and keep going?
To get the ideas what?
Organized.
Oh.
Get the ideas organized and keep going. I mean, yeah. I'd say, go ahead. Go.
I think you just have to, and again, I struggle with this too when it's just getting it all on the page. It's getting what, Anne Lamott calls a crappy first draft, only she uses a different word. But it's like really just getting it all on the page so you can see it in front of you, and just know that it's fine. Know it's going to be crap, and know it's going to be unorganized. And then, but know that you have to get it on the page, and don't expect it to come out in an organized way or a complete way. And I love once I've done that, when I've gotten it all out and I think it's going to be terrible and I don't know how I'm going to finish it, when I'm in that revising stage and seeing things that I didn't before, and seeing connections and that I didn't know were there, that you're just not going to find when it's swirling around in your head. So you really just have to trust the process, and even when you don't feel it, just know when you get it there on the page, just keep doing it and keep working at it, and it will emerge. But you can't trust yourself. You have to trust the process.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, kind of a general theme from several of your last answers. I mean, you, and I know that the first part, or the getting all out our stage, the writing your first draft is not necessarily the part you enjoy or that comes naturally to you. But it's kind of I guess the necessary evil of writing, of just a crappy first draft, as it were, and then the skill of refining afterward is kind of the next step where things start to shine. So,
yes. Yeah.
Good. So I guess, I mean, it's been said before, it's not original to either of us, but to writers who struggle to get started, you just have to get something out there, carve out time, be intentional, I guess. Put it on the page. It's the first step, and then you have something to work with. You can go from there. Is that fair, you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Very good. Thank you. Let's see. There are some questions about reading too. I might come back to those because I wanted to ask about publishing also, and since we've touched on that slightly already, but because you mentioned, I think you mentioned having a book deal already, or like, I'm not certain how that works, honestly, or you had, I guess, a proposal to a publisher or something like that before the full book was even out there. So I guess I'd ask, how do you find the right editor or publisher, and how did that process go for you, for either one or any of your books?
Yeah, so I mean, as anyone who's tried knows, it's hard to find a publisher. Everyone's writing, everyone wants to be a writer, it seems like, and everyone wants to be published. So you really have to have the long term in mind, and know that it takes a long time. There are very few, if any, real overnight success stories. I mean, sometimes what you think, the person you think is an overnight success story actually did a lot behind the scenes and for a long time that you might not know about. And also I have seen some young writers who kind of, who were doing more, who were bigger names than when I started, but because they just burned out fast. Like, they were people who were blogging and they had big blogs, so they got a publishing deal and they published their first book and it did okay, but nothing really, they kind of sputtered out after that because they weren't building a strong foundation.
Right.
So all that to say that, this is one of the major differences between nonfiction and fiction, is that with fiction, you do have to have a completed manuscript. With nonfiction, you don't have a completed manuscript. You have a proposal with sample chapters, because the publisher will have a big say and a big influence in how you shape that final
Okay.
project. And that's important. You have to think, like, just because you've written something does not mean that someone else is obligated to spend their money publishing your book and promoting it like that, just because you've written, so you have to think of being published as a partnership. So it's a partnership in the sense that they're going to give you, if you're going with traditional publishing, which is what I know and what I generally recommend, then you're asking someone to invest in your work, invest in you, to pay to have the book published, to pay you, to pay for advertising and marketing and editing and proofreading and cover design, to pay for all those things. And they want your book to sell to their audience. So that means they know their audience better than you do. And so there's a humility there in understanding that if you want to be partnered with someone, again, you think of the word publisher, they're the ones who are going to make the book public. If you just self-publish something, the only people who are going to buy it are people you know. So it just depends on how many people you know. But if you want someone else to publish it for you, which means make it public, then you're working in partnership with them. And so there's, I wouldn't call it a compromise. It's a collaboration, really. So you have to prove yourself to a publisher so that they know you're worth investing in. And there are lots of ways to prove yourself. Is you can have expertise, you can have a track record of writing, you can have an audience that knows you, and they will invest in you. It's not like you have to already be super successful, although of course they like those people. But you have to have a track record that shows them you're willing to invest in. So having, you could have a blog, yes, or you could have a lot of Twitter followers, but there's no magic formula. It just, there are a lot. Think about what you can do to show that you're worth investing in. And one of those things to break into it is to actually go where the publishers are. That, COVID aside, that means going to the conferences where publishers are. Like, don't expect them to knock on your door. You need to go knock on their door. And that means going to where the publishers are, learning from them, networking, knowing the books that they publish so that you know whether you're a good match. All of that stuff, you're going to them, not the other way around. And I know I've just kind of rambled a lot because there's a lot to say. And I do want to say this. I want to tell everyone, don't ever pay any money to be published. Don't ever. There are always, now, if you self-publish like through Amazon, I don't think that's the greatest thing to do. Maybe there are reasons to do it, but you're not really paying. You're just doing it yourself, and then you get a little percentage or whatever, however much you sell. That's okay. But there are many, many outfits out there that want to exploit people's dreams of being a published writer by making you pay for things that they can't deliver on. They are taking advantage of you. You should never pay to be published. That would be like, if you're a churchgoer and you said to the church, I'll pay you, let me sing on Sunday, like how humiliating. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not good enough to, that people would want me to sing, but I'll pay you to let me sing. Be humble enough to know that you have to keep working on it so that you don't have to pay someone to publish you.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of putting yourself out there, and I mean, I read a book. I mentioned it in one of my last live talks, but I've been trying to study this topic too, and I read a book about how for creative people of any genre or of any I guess medium, it's a lot of work. It's not just the work of creating your thing, which is in itself good. I mean, but just because you've written someone doesn't mean someone's obligated to publish it. It's a lot of follow-up work too. Similar to that, on the same note, what have you done, or what are you doing for, I guess, self-promotion or engaging the audience? I know you have a sizable social media following. I guess any tips or strategies in that you can share that have worked well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one reason why I have a large Twitter following is because, I've published in a lot of different places. So in some national publications like the Atlantic and the Washington Post. And if you publish in places like that, you're going to, people will follow you. But I honestly think that the biggest reason why I have a large Twitter following is because I engage with people, and that, like, I don't just ignore them like some people do, or just, I get everyone uses Twitter differently, so I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying I engage with people on Twitter. And so that there's a kind of a relationship that forms there. And also I use Twitter to bring people what I like. So I find my people on Twitter because I share articles about Jane Austen or Charlotte Bronte, the things that I'm writing about. I share articles about those things, or I share articles just that are human. I share on Twitter the things that I enjoy reading about, or the things I care about. Sometimes those are negative things. And so by doing that, and I share other people's work, and so by doing that, I'm creating an audience of people who care about the things that I care about. So naturally, those people will be the ones that are more likely to be interested in the things that I write. So I connect with people there. I serve things that will draw a like-minded audience to me, and I engage with people.
Very good. Yeah, that's part of it too. I mean, I'm still learning this myself. I mean, I've been trying maybe for the past year and a half to, I guess, promote my social media following again, and I'm learning it's not overnight success. I mean, it is very rarely for anyone, and it's a lot of back and forth. But it, like any other part of the process, it takes time and effort. Okay.
And if you share something written by someone who's writing the kinds of things that interest you, then again, it's not like you do this. It's not a mercenary relationship or whatever, but just, if you genuinely share something that written because you like it, and then you connect with that person, then they may share something that you write later on. So
it shouldn't be all about mercenary, like you said. It should be, I mean, some genuine relationships and genuine connections being forged there. That's good. Okay, thank you for the tips. I want to get some of these questions in the audience because they're piling up. SL also asked, are you a Hemingway fan? I know you're more focused on British than American, but are you a Hemingway fan, and are you familiar with this Hemingway documentary from Cannon Burns? There's a question there in the chat.
Yeah, I am familiar with the documentary. I need to watch it. I haven't watched it yet. I mean, Hemingway is fine. I've taught some of his short stories, but I haven't read a lot of Hemingway. So, his minimalist style is not necessarily the one that I like the most, but I do appreciate it. I've just recently gotten into John Steinbeck, so I'm like way behind on that. So that's my American writer of choice right now.
There you go. Okay, I'm not too familiar with the documentary either. I've read some Hemingway. Okay, thank you. This next one is a topic I know. Well, from hearing you speak, I think I think I know some of your answer, and I think you have a lot of good things to say. But Lily asked, when considering the types of books to put in a church library to support or edify a congregation, would you recommend that fiction be included, or is contemporary Christian fiction too problematic to be included, therefore excluding all fiction works? So I know you have a lot to say about reading, so go for
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I don't have a problem with including contemporary Christian fiction. I don't read it. I think a good library, even if it's a church library, should serve all people. And so you definitely should have classics in there. You can have my classics that are written written with introductions for Christian readers.
I have
You
one
know,
of
I
those
don't.
here too.
Yes, and so yes, include those. There are 4 out now, and will be 2 next year. So I think a good variety of books in a church library is excellent, of fiction and nonfiction. I don't, yeah, I don't know what's good Christian fiction, because I don't. There are some. I don't read these, but some Christian fiction writers that I know are good because I know them, and they're what they care about. Sean Smucker, Andrew Peterson,
Yes.
KB Hoyle. There are, I think we are coming a long way. There are more and more Christian writers out there who are trying to write beautiful things, not just, sappy romance novels.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you a brief plug on these classics. I have Sense and Sensibility here with a guide to reading and reflecting by you. You also have, I think, is it Frankenstein?
Frankenstein,
How
Jane
Dark Night-
Eyre,
Jane
and
Eyre,
Heart of
right.
Darkness. Yep.
And you said
Yeah.
there's 2 more coming out next year. I wasn't familiar with that.
Which one?
You said there's 2 more coming out. Is that right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I haven't written them yet. They'll be coming out
Okay.
next year.
Okay.
They'll be Tess of the D'Urbervilles and The Scarlet Letter.
Okay. I've Tess of the D'Urbervilles has been on my reading list for a while, partially because you wrote about it in books. So
Yes.
I'll have to.
So wait for my edition to come out.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's in my never-ending pile of I need to read this eventually. So I'll wait for your edition. Okay, good to know. I also have not read Sense and Sensibility, so I'm gonna read that one too. Thank you for commenting on that. Let's see. Lizzie asks, how do you manage time between writing and academia? I'm wanting to be a professor, still an undergrad now, but I also want to write. It just seems like a lot to do at once, which I'm sure it certainly is. I kind of myself, I got out of the academic world. Even when I was like a teaching assistant, I wasn't doing much creative writing then. So how do you find the time or focus to do both well?
Yeah, it's definitely hard. And when I was a professor just starting out and teaching 5 classes a semester, there wasn't much writing going on. And then when I got promoted to assistant professor and was teaching 4 classes a semester instead of 5, I had a little bit more time. And now I have a research post, so I have even more time. But that's so over 2 years of teaching at the college level. Again, you have to have the long game in mind. There are, to use the cliche, there are seasons. I mean, it's nice because you do have an academic schedule that gives you summers off, and so that's the time when I do my most writing, is during the summer, and you just kind of have to plan it that way, and know that it's just, you can't do it all at once.
Okay, yeah, it's again well, you said the long game. It's things don't happen overnight, and yeah, I mean, and your first year teaching, you weren't doing all that, but yeah, it's I mean something you said to me. I mean, when I was chatting with you, I guess on Facebook, if I can mention it, is like you didn't publish your first book until you were 47, I think. Is that right? And I'm 30. I'm not really published yet. I mean, I'm not counting print on demand stuff I put out, and so I'm working on this too. So I mean, as people say, you have time. I mean, you got to work on it, but there is time to get there if you're willing to put in the work. Okay, good, thank you. Couple of questions. I guess maybe similar ones, and just rather make connections about, I guess, the influences on you or the things you love. Adam asks, what writer or speaker makes you want to write, and why?
What writer or speaker makes me want to write?
Yes, and why?
And
Maybe
why?
Clear, but.
Yeah. I guess I would go back again to Flannery O'Connor, and just the way that she talks about how we can show truth in what we write, and through great stories that reveal the mystery through the manners. She's probably the person who makes me want to write the most. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, good choice. Good question. And then S asks, of all the things you love about 18th and 19th century literature, what do you love the most about it? What keeps you coming back or continually inspires a sense of wonder?
So, I mean, I love the depth of thinking and thought and insight into human character and human dilemmas. And of course, a lot of, writers can do that at any time, but the way that these writers use language, they use language, and can just bring so much nuanced meaning to their characterizations and their dilemmas. Like I think of Thomas Hardy. I just got done teaching Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and every time I read that novel, I am just amazed at how, with just a short passage, he can, or an image, the way he uses imagery to give insight into the character. Like he talks about, I won't get it exactly right, but just a streak of granite in Angel Clare's heart, of that's logic, that and Angel Clare is sort of like, he's the hero, but he makes you so mad. But he has this deposit of logic in his heart that makes him unable to waver when he should, out of just basic human decency. And it's just the way it's written. It just gives so much understanding to the human condition just by using a particular phrase that talks about logic in our hearts and so forth. And you could just spend an hour on one paragraph in Hardy and just be so enriched.
There's a lot of value there. Yeah. I think that's more recommendation for me to read it, which I'll get there.
Now you have to wait, though.
Yeah, I've read some of Thomas Hardy's poetry. I think I remember I wrote a paper years ago about some of his poems. I've not read his longer works, but I'll get there. So again, this time. Someone asked, "What does your writing space look like?"
What is my what? Writing?
What does your writing space look like? I don't know if that means like.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. I travel throughout my house. So sometimes, I mean, there's this room I'm sitting in now is where I'll end up doing most of my writing because it's quiet. But for me, writing also begins with reading. So I'll read maybe in one room or when it's nice out on my porch. But this particular room is where I usually sit with my laptop and write. I mean, I do most of my writing on my laptop. I have some notebooks and I take notes in there, but really once I get started, I'm using my laptop. So, so I'm writing at home. I have a nice space surrounded by lots of books and my dogs, and it's peaceful here. So I'm lucky.
That's good. That's important. Okay. Thank you. So I think that's the bottom of them for now. If you have any more last minute questions, put in the chat. I think we're one down. I meant to ask this earlier and I forgot to. I think I skipped it my list. I was going to ask you, what's one writing tip you can offer that most people overlook or don't know, having read a lot of student writing and I guess taught writing? Is there a tip that people often miss, or that just you wish more people would know?
Well, I don't think it's something that people don't know, but I want to emphasize the importance of revision, to just give yourself time and space away from, whatever draft it is, so that you can come back with fresh eyes and revise. And just know that no one is good enough to get it as good as it could be the first or second or third time around. I mean, even the romantics who pretended they were, I mean, Wordsworth and Shelley, they revised their works extensively. Even though Wordsworth said it was like a spontaneous overflow of powerful emotion, he also worked at it. So I just think knowing, just knowing that you need to revise to make it better. No matter how good it is, if you're one of those who can come out with something really good in the first draft, great. But just think of how much better it could be when you revise it a lot. So that's my big thing. And from reading student papers, maybe more specifically, is just, and this is part of revision, there are just so many things that we put down on paper that aren't saying what we really mean them to say.
Yeah.
Because we haven't chosen the right words. So we mean one thing, but somehow the words we pick say something else, and that's probably the most common comment I will write on a student paper is like, do you really mean this? And then they look back, oh, that's not what I meant. I meant this. Oh, okay, but why didn't you write? Because it just takes it. Because it takes time to craft and say what we're really trying to say.
We don't know how our words appear to someone else. We understand them because we know what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
But, yeah. It seems to be the common theme. I did one of these talks with my dad, who and he said similar things like nobody is good enough the first time to not need an editor or not need revision. So yeah, you're right. It's not something we don't know, but some of us need to hear it again. There was a question: is there a book you used to despise, but as you've grown and matured, you now love, or perhaps the reverse, a book you used to love but now you despise? Oh. Interesting questions.
That's a good question. Is there a book? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. There's nothing that's coming to mind. Well, I'll just say this. I despised Moby Dick in college.
Okay.
And I bought it a summer or two ago. I need to go back and reread it. It's my own challenge. I want to go back and reread it and see if I still despise it or not. But the jury's still out on that.
Okay. So maybe next year we'll do this again. You can let us know. Okay. Moby Dick is the answer. We touched on this already, but I was just going to ask you, I guess, as we're winding down, what do you have in the works currently or for the future? Anything else coming out? I mean, I know you have the two more classics. Are you any more books in your future, like original ones to you, or?
Yeah, I'm working on a proposal for that now. I can't say more, but it's an idea I'm very excited about. Yeah, but so my publisher has been anxiously waiting for a couple of years. I'm a slow writer, I've been doing this other project. So they are waiting for me. And I'm very excited about this project. So I'm working on the proposal now, my sample chapter. So. Okay,
good to know. So stay tuned. I'm sure you'll hear more about that, not from me, from her, in the next little while. This is a question I had, not for you specifically, but just in general that I've struggled with as a writer too. How do you know when to stop revising? There are so many greats you continue to revise forever. So I guess
usually it's the due date. You have a due date.
Yeah. if you have a publisher due date, that's helpful. I guess that's where it differs from fiction and such. I've struggled with how do you know when you're ready to pursue publishing? Like when you take your idea and go looking for a publisher. But it's a little different in the nonfiction world.
Right. But I think that's part of what the networking is, and going to conferences and being involved in writers groups. And so when you're ready to take something to a publisher, then if it's a good publisher, they're going to have an editing process as well. So that's how you can submit it to a publisher, and if you get no kind of response, it's crap, then you have to still keep revising. If you get a publisher who's interested, you put yourself out there and you listen to the feedback you get.
Mm-hmm. Very important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Lizzie asked, wants to know, how do you feel about James Joyce? She's finishing up a class on his works and has many thoughts.
Yeah, James Joyce is a genius. He's very different. He's got short stories that are more accessible. I really like Joyce a lot.
Have you read Ulysses?
I've read Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, yeah.
Okay.
I took a grad course in Joyce, so.
Okay. There you go. Yeah, I'm not familiar very much, so I know the titles, but I can't comment much. So I guess there's many thoughts. Let's wait till later. I know your time is valuable, so thank you very much for being here. And I guess last question for now. If people aren't familiar with you already or want to know more, where can they find you, or where can they follow you on social media or on the web?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a website. I mean, it's just a static place that, kind of gives the basic information, KarenSwallowPryor.com. And I'm most active and engaged on Twitter, which is KS Pryor, KSPRIOR. I'm easy to find there.
Okay.
So.
You have it. Many of you probably are following her already, but if you aren't, I'd say she's worth following. So find her on social media. Thank you for being here, Dr. Pryor. I appreciate it, and I know your time and your insight are valuable, and I think we've all gleaned a few things today. Everyone who's listened and watched and commented, thank you for being here also. I wanted to say, you may or may not know me. I'm a former student of Dr. Pryor's, trying to start my own author journey too. I'd appreciate it if you'd like my page on Facebook, Samuel N. Harris, where this video is being hosted. There's also a link, there's a pinned link there, where you can sign up for my mailing list and get future content for writers. Future discussions like this hopefully are still going to be happening. And, so please take the time to do that. I'd appreciate it. And go forth, keep reading well, keep writing well. And yeah, any final comments?
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Sure, thank you for being here. Okay, thank you everyone for watching. Have a great Friday. And